Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Stronger in the key, Prabhupada key, Srimad Bhagavatam key, Untitled Chapter. Okay, so try to finish class early today. So when it gets to 10 past, if I've gone off on a tangent, if you just give me a little heads up that I've got 5 minutes to go. Okay. I'll try and finish by 15:15. Been asked to finish at 20 past, but sometimes you say if you want to be on time, then be early. Or if you want to be late, then be on time. So we'll go back to Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita. Is it written on the Vaishnava calendar today? Okay, so not exactly sure we left off here, but we'll just start with this marker as there's no actual line marker. So this is Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita, volume 6. Here it is. Krishna's Great Soldier is the name of this chapter. If I want to survive, so this is Prabhupada just about to leave his body. If I want to survive, he said, of course I have to take something. So I take it at this point, the devotees had came to Prabhupada and petitioned him to stay in the material world. His work came out slowly, but with difficulty. It is not possible to survive without taking any food, but my survival means so many inconveniences, one after another. Therefore, I have decided to die peacefully. His voice trailed off, and everyone was too stunned to speak. Shishikodantai Mahaprasad. They sat looking almost blankly at him as he lay with his eyes closed. He occasionally made a noise like and only after several very long minutes did Tamal Krishna manage to ask Prabhupada if they should continue with the kirtan. By this time, more devotees, having finished lunch, were entering the room, and they began softly singing kirtan. Tamal Krishna leaned forward and assured Prabhupada about the stipend payments for his former family. Prabhupada acknowledged. Don't worry, said Tamal Krishna. I'll see that each of them is satisfied. They won't feel sorry in any way. You've provided for everyone, Srila Prabhupada. After a few minutes, Prabhupada turned his attention to Harishori, who was sobbing silently near Prabhupada's head. With some sternness in his voice, Prabhupada says, why do you want me to survive? Harishori could not speak. He felt that if he asked Prabhupada to stay, it would be an offense, since he had already decided to leave. Harishori could not keep his emotions in check, and yet he didn't want to stay. He didn't want to say, stay and struggle. Neither did he nor any of the others want Prabhupada to leave. Somehow Tamal Krishna had not caught Prabhupada's last remark to Harishori, and so he leaned forward towards Prabhupada, half questioning, they want you to survive? If I want to die, said Prabhupada, this is a very peaceful death. You go on chanting. Srila Prabhupada ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, entitled The Island of Jambudweep, text number 28, is that right? Okay, so I'll just go through the verse myself, and we'll go to the translation just to catch up in a bit of time. Yad yatra nasvarga sukha vasheshitam shvishtasya suktasya kritasya shobhanam tina janabe smriti maj janma nashad vashi harir yad bhajatam sham tanuti. Translation: We are now living in the heavenly planets, undoubtedly as a result of our having performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities and yajnas, and having studied the Vedas. However, our lives here will one day be finished. We pray that at that time, if any merit remains from our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bharatvarsh as human beings, able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bharatvarsh and expands the good fortune of its people. Prabhupada's purport: It is certainly as a result of pious activities that one takes birth in the heavenly planets. But from those planets one must nevertheless come down again to earth, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Kshine punyamarcha lokam vishanti. Even the demigods must return to the earth to work like ordinary men when the results of their pious activity expire. Nevertheless, the demigods desire to come to the land of Bharatvarsh. If even a small portion of the merits of their pious activities remains, in other words, to take birth in Bharatvarsh, one must perform more pious activities than the demigods. In Bharatvarsh, one is naturally Krishna conscious, and if one further cultivates his Krishna consciousness by the grace of Krishna, he certainly expands his good fortune by becoming perfect in Krishna consciousness and very easily going back home to Godhead. In many other places in the Vedic literature, it is found that even demigods want to come to this land of Bharatvarsh. A foolish person may desire to be promoted to the heavenly planets as a result of his pious activities, but even the demigods from the heavenly planets want to come to Bharatvarsh and achieve bodies that may be very easily used to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly says, Bharata Bhumiti Haila Manusya Janmajar, Janma Sartakakari Kara Para Upakar. A human being born in the land of Bharatvarsh has the special prerogative to develop Krishna consciousness. Therefore, those already born in Bharatvarsh should take lessons from the Shastras and Guru and should fully take advantage of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to be fully equipped with Krishna consciousness. By taking full advantage of Krishna consciousness, one goes back to Godhead. Yanti mad yajinopi mam. Krishna consciousness movement is therefore spreading this facility to human society by opening many centers all over the world so that people may associate with the pure devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement, understand the science of Krishna consciousness, and ultimately go back to Godhead. Om Agyanatimarandasya Ganjana Sakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmir Shigrive Maha Vakam Karoti Vachilam Pangam Lagayate Garunya Kripatamam Vande Shigrim Janitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We are now living in the heavenly planets undoubtedly as a result of our having performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities and yajnas, and having studied the Vedas. However, our lives here will one day be finished. We pray that at that time, if any merit remains from our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bharatvarsh as human beings, able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bharatvarsh and expands the good fortune of its people. So if somebody has, say you've got like 10 trillion pounds in your bank, you would think, well, this is going to go on forever. I can just keep spending. I don't have to work. Somebody would think that's a great thing. Or sometimes you take it down to a more practical level. Somebody wins the lottery. they've been working all their days and they've been buying a scratch card, and then they win the lottery and they get like £5 million or something like that, and they think, great, I don't have to work anymore, and I'll just enjoy. And there's examples of this where simply enjoying, spending, thinking it's unlimited, but actually it's limited. So whether it's 5 million, 5 billion, whatever it is, it's unlimited. It's going to go out. So similar with these demigods, they have performed some great austerities, penances, study of the Vedas, etc. And they've got a great fortune, but in due course of time it runs out. So no matter how long, it's said that the demigod's life is so long that we can't conceive of it, yet it's still nothing in comparison to eternity. Even if you're in the material world for countless millions of births, it's all over, and we go back to that eternal atmosphere, which is Sudasattva, free from the modes of ignorance and passion, pure unalloyed goodness, where there's no beginning and no end. We think in this life in terms of beginning and end because the modes of passion and ignorance are there. So the mode of passion is creating, the mode of ignorance is destroying. So in the material world where the modes of passion and ignorance play, then we have beginnings and ends. Therefore, there's always some apprehension in the material world because we know that in our deep psyche, we know that whatever we have experienced in the past came to an end. And we don't want that to happen. Therefore, there's anxiety. And why do we not want it to happen? Is because we know there is another life, which is unending. So whether we're living for 100 years or 100,000 years, when it's all over, it's in the past. It doesn't matter. So this birth in the heavenly planets as a demigod, it'd be good if it was actually making an attempt to stay awake. Sitting with our eyes closed means we're not even showing a sign that we're interested in staying awake. Sorry, I'm going to say that. Make an effort. So it's no matter how long we have of pious results, and it's actually, although it appears to be such a great thing, we think, wow, this life, we're lucky if we live to 100. If someone gets to the age of 100, the Queen sends a letter, isn't it? As if that's like something really big achievement or something. They just happen to remain in that body, performing sinful activity for 100 years. That's no big achievement, really. But it's not the length of life which is important. So even our leaders, they don't really know what are the real values. The value of life, we see people getting knighthoods for doing crazy things like, I don't know, what kind of things people get knighthood for telling a few jokes, or for some other things that they do for hitting a ball with a bat or something like that, and they become a knight of the empire. It's a bit of a joke, but what about the people who have actually got good qualities? So it's not a question of how long we live, it's the quality of life. But because they have no reference, this is why people are bewildered, even our leaders, even though they may try to do something good, the best that they can possibly imagine, because they have no real reference to know what is good and what is not good, what is worthy of honor, what is not worthy of honor, then they're simply having a shot in the dark. But in the Vedic literatures and Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very clearly listed what are the divine qualities which human beings should aspire for, and what are the asuric or non-godly qualities which one should avoid. And I can't say for anyone else, but personally speaking, then if we look at ourselves, if we're honest, we give ourselves an honest appraisal, then we have some work to do. I've mentioned this before, but one of the first times I read Bhagavad Gita, It was before I'd even joined the temple, so I was 19 or 20 at the time. And I read the Divine and Demoniac Natures in chapter 16. So first of all, description of the divine qualities, and I was thinking, oh, I'm pretty close to that. I've got a lot of those. I was thinking, wow, this is really encouraging. And then Krishna went to list the demoniac qualities, and I honestly had to say, actually, that's more like where I'm at. These other qualities are wishful thinking. And this is good because if we can see what is the goal and what are the pitfalls. It's like sometimes in the battlefield, there may be a minefield there, and they have a certain destination to get to. Now, if they knew where all the mines were planted, they'd know what to avoid. But if you don't know where the mines are, then it's a very precarious situation. But if someone came along and said, oh, here's a map, this is where all the mines are planted, and I sat and watched them do all this, then you say, okay, no problem, just dodge this and that, and then you feel that you're getting to the goal very quickly. So the Vedic literatures, they're telling us the path of pravriti and nivriti, the path which is to be accepted and the path which is to be rejected. So in each Upanishad, it's also mentioned that one should know the path of knowledge and ignorance side by side. Now, you might wonder, why would we want to know what the path of ignorance is? Right, what do you think? What's the value of knowing what's the path of ignorance?
You know what to avoid.
Exactly. Otherwise, we might think, oh, well, maybe this is also good because it comes in a certain, it looks quite close to something which is the path of knowledge. But if it's clearly delineated as to this is knowledge, this is ignorance, this is what we should do if we want to elevate our consciousness, and this is what we should avoid. And then the question is, it's up to us, because Krishna will never interfere with our independence, but he's saying clearly, this is the way to go. If you want this, and this is the way to go. If you don't, if you want something else. And in Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned, or Krishna mentions, not it's mentioned, that everyone follows my paths in all respects. So does that mean it doesn't matter what you do? Krishna sanctioned it. Is it okay to do anything then? What do we think?
You follow a wrong path in one sense. I guess it can be a couple of things. One is that you indirectly serving Krishna by serving Maya, but that's not considered appropriate. Another thing is because you're getting reaction and you get like hammered by Maya, that's hopefully potentially could lead towards Krishna.
It could, but maybe that could be a long time, and it has been. It could be many, many births. You could think, well, I'll just find my own way. So it's like you're in a deep, dark forest, and somebody knows you've been missing for days, and they come and find you and say, yeah, I've come to rescue from this huge forest. It's 100 miles in diameter, and you're going round in circles. So I know the way out, just follow me, and say, no, I'll find my own way. But I know the way. I just came from outside the forest, and I know how to get back out. And the person says, if we go this way, see that hill there, and then that river. And by the time we get to there, then we'll be out. No, I'll find my own way. And meanwhile, we'll just continue to go lost and lost. So this is pride, that we don't want to accept help from anybody. We just got to do it ourselves. So that type of thing is actually not very helpful in spiritual life. So this descending process of knowledge is the quickest way for elevation. So descending means that the higher knowledge is descending from above, and it's coming to us so it takes the guesswork out of things. We just have to put faith in it. Otherwise we can have some people say, oh, it's not about the goal, it's about the journey. But okay. So if you want to go to Glasgow, Padder, just get a bus to Dumfries. You get the X74. Doesn't matter if you go north or south, it's X74. So just go on that one, and then get on any bus. Once you get there, just go on any bus. It's all about the journey. And then maybe after a few years, you'll get to Glasgow. Or maybe you'll get chucked off the bus because you ran out of money. And this is what happens. We want to This human form of life is like a bus journey. And if we don't know where we're going, and before we get to the destination, time will be up and we haven't got there. So we have to know where we want to go. A friend of mine, he wrote a song when we were youngsters. It was called Belief, and he says people who don't know where they're going usually end up nowhere at all. I think it was taken from some other quote, but it's very true. If you don't know where you're going, then how will you know when you get there? So this Krishna consciousness, the demigods are hankering to also take a birth in the material world because they value it. Prabhupada refers to the demigods as being more improved living entities. So the living entities are conditioned in the material world, and we're simply caught up in the sense enjoyment and trying to create some better future for ourselves. And the demigods, because of all their austerities, penances, etc., then they're improved, conditioned souls, but they're still conditioned. And they're also considered to be just like sometimes someone may be in prison and they have no windows, but the demigods, they have a window, at least they can see what is outside. They get a hint, a glimpse of spiritual life. And because of that, then, it's mentioned they're queuing up to take birth in Kali Yuga for a short lifespan to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya so they can go back to home, back to Godhead. But even though we have such a great fortune, there's a short span of life, we're sometimes worrying, am I going to live long enough? And then we get to a certain age. I remember it was when Spiritual Master, his mother had passed away and she was in her 90s, and I said, is it? I think he said his father also lived quite long. I said, well, I hope you also live to your 90s. And he said, is that a blessing or a curse? He says, I don't want to live till I'm 90 odd. So devotees are not afraid of death because they've already found the goal, and they've, even within this life, Jivan Mukta Sauchate, they're not guessing that maybe they've got it right and they'll find out at the end of their life. They know because the knowledge is Dharmam tu Shikshat Bhagavat Pranitam, they're experiencing it. This Dharma, or the living entity's original constitutional position, original nature, can be experienced by taking part in Sanatan Dharma, or the eternal occupation of the soul, which is devotional service. And the demigods, they know they've had their fun and that their merit's running out, and here they're saying, hopefully by the end of our lifetime we still have some merit to take birth in Bharatavarsh because we deem this so valuable. So even the demigods are thinking, this is what they're looking for. It's like, okay, I'm having great fun now, but I know it's going to end. So they're blessed with a certain amount of knowledge, but at the same time, the sense gratification which is on offer in the spirit and the heavenly planets is so great that it's hard to say no. It's just like nowadays, even someone offers us something like a new pair of shoes, and we think, oh, great, now my life is improved. Or we get some small windfall with a certain amount of money, or some kind of petty material improvement takes place, and we think we're doing well. But if you want to read about the enjoyment of the heavenly planets, you'll find that also in, I think it's later on in the 5th canto. It explains some of the heavenly delights. It doesn't go into it too much because the Bhagavatam is not there to encourage people to do karma kanda and then go to the heavenly planets, but to give up all tinge of material desire. So material desires are considered to be like waves of the sea, which, waves of the river, also waves of the sea, but this is a particular analogy that I was just reading this morning. Yeah. So this is from Bhagavatam, 4th canto. There are three kinds of transcendentalists trying to overcome the influence of the modes of material nature: Jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. All of them attempt to overcome the influence of the senses, which is compared to the incessant waves of a river. The waves of a river flow incessantly, and it is very difficult to stop them. Similarly, the waves of desire for material enjoyment are so strong that they cannot be stopped by any process other than Bhakti Yoga. So I think it was in the previous verse. It was this verse: Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama udara tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is freed from all material desire, that's akama, full of material desires, sarvakama, or desires to become one with the Lord, moksha kama, he should engage in devotional service. So even though, and Prabhupada mentions in this purport here that we should seek out the association of pure devotees and understand the science of Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead. So even we may not recognize what is a pure devotee. So Prabhupada covers this also. He says that one should seek out the association of devotees, pure devotees or devotees. So it's not like, well, you can't expect much of me. I don't see any pure devotees around here. And that's because perhaps we don't know what is a pure devotee or what pure devotional service is. And even if we do know, then a pure devotee, he thinks everyone else is a devotee and he's just a neophyte. Like we take the example of Srila Prabhupada, he considered himself full number one. Now we wouldn't dare to agree with that. We wouldn't say, I won't even mention it. But we certainly don't think that. We think, no, if anyone's a fool, it's me. But Prabhupada is showing us that he really believes that. He's not just saying that so that we say, okay, that's good, he said that, now I'll say the same thing. Some mechanical thing. The devotees really feel like that. And they feel that everyone's a good devotee except for me. You know, I'm such a rascal. I've got so much good fortune here, association of devotees, prasadam, the holy name, kirtan, shastra, but still I want to do all nonsense. So this is the humility of the devotee. They don't think themselves to be something great. In the material consciousness, then, to be proud and to never admit any faults, to never say sorry. This is never admit your mistakes. And to bring others down, to put yourself up. This is material consciousness. But spiritual consciousness, that is the opposite. So although the demigods, they aspire to come to Bharatavarsh. So when we talk about Bharatavarsh, what do we mean? Anybody? Talks to you?
India.
In India, but it could be more than India. Yeah. But of course, it's primarily it's India because that's where the Lord appears. But of course, we don't have any maps, but we see through Shastra that India wasn't just where it is just now, it was a far greater place. And Bharata Bhumi was the whole planet. It was all under the Emperor Bharat. Even the scientists say at one time all the continents were one continent. So whether it was that time or not, who knows? But according to the Shastras, even according to material knowledge, it's a fallacy that the continents were not in connection, were not in communication with each other until very recently, as in like a few hundred years. When I lived in Cambridge, I was serving this very amazing devotee, Sadaputta Prabhu, and he was doing a lot of research for books which he later on wrote, such as Alien Identities, Forbidden Archaeology, Vedic Cosmology, stuff like that, mechanistic, non-mechanistic science, which if you're any good at maths, it's basically a math book showing you through equations how consciousness and God exists. So anyway, he was working as a lecturer in Cambridge University to get credentials so that he could get Prabhupada's books into the educational establishment. And he used to bring back research from the vast libraries of Cambridge Uni, and he brought back one modern copy of an ancient manuscript called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which apparently was a map or a book of maps which was put together in Persia like 1500 years ago. And even at that, it was considered that these maps were ancient, even at that time when it was put together. And it showed you the coastline of America and various other continents, all the continents of the world, showing that intercontinental communication and connections were going on for thousands of years, not just like nobody knew about America until 300 or 400 years ago. And he was saying that part of his service given to him from Srila Prabhupada through the Bhaktivedanta Institute was to show that the Vedic civilization did exist throughout the whole planet at one time. And he showed a couple of evidential things. He said through things like music, culture, folklore, art, architecture, currency, so many things were there. So he gave a couple of examples of, like in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, they have the churning of the ocean of milk with the demigods and the asuras. And he said that this was known, it was a known tale in Russian folklore. And he said also on the other side of the globe, it was known also in South America. And he showed some pictures of some photos of some carvings in some Mayan temple or Aztec temple, can't remember which one it was, of the churning of the ocean of milk. So, of course, usually when some invading force takes over another country, they want to eradicate any credit they had, any civilization. They assume whatever they want to from there, and they try to eradicate. So this also went on. India, the knowledge of India, and because it's such a vast knowledge and so advanced, the architecture is so advanced, like in Jagannath Puri temple a few years ago, they had to do some repairs. And they couldn't find anyone knowledgeable enough to actually repair the temple. Eventually they got someone from Canada who flew in to do the repairs on the masonry work because of the way it was constructed. And even now, when they do some repairs on some temples, they don't have the craftsmanship to replace the work, just like at Kusum Sarovar in Govardhan. They're replacing some stone carved panels which were only made 250, 300 years ago. But instead, they just put some blank sandstone panels in because they don't have that craftsmanship. So it's not that we look at the Indian or Vedic lifestyle as being something primitive, but actually the knowledge was already there of so many things. But because people are proud of their own achievements, then they don't want to give credit to others. Therefore, they try to make out that the past was simply in the darkness. But we see in Kali Yuga, as it's going on, we're getting more and more into darkness. And this is also, and then the way they try to solve the problems, Prabhupada explains, when one gets tired of keeping a burden on his head, he will place it on his shoulder. This does not mean that he has become freed from the strains of carrying the burden. Similarly, human society, in the name of civilization, is creating one kind of trouble to avoid another kind of trouble. In contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. But at the same time, we have created other problems. We have to construct so many roads, and yet these roads are insufficient to cope with automobile congestion and traffic jams. There are also the problems of air pollution and fuel shortage. So Prabhupada was saying this back in the 70s. The conclusion is that the processes we manufacture to counteract or minimize our distresses do not actually put an end to our pains. It is simply an illusion. We simply place the burden from the head to the shoulder. But the solution to the material problems is not a material solution. It's not like, okay, we're running out of petrol, let's go and dig up some stuff we can use for batteries. Oh, we're running out of batteries, what will we do next? And all the while, well, it's like Prabhupada says in the purport to the Mahamantra that the conditioned living entity tries to lord over material nature, but the more they try to lord over material nature, the more they become entangled in her complexities. This is the nature of illusion. That we think we're getting free. Oh, I'm just about there. The donkey is chasing the carrot and the stick, and it's like one more step. Oh, I nearly got it there, and it's swinging. But even though it swings close, it's just out of reach. And they think, I'll just try and time it so I get it this time. And he goes, oh, nearly got it that time. Okay, next one. And then he starts galloping for it, and it's just, oh, I nearly got it. And he spends all day just chasing it, and then at the end of the day, he might get the carrot, or he might just get some hay, and if the carrot's good enough, then the cruel owner will keep it for tomorrow to save himself a carrot. So maybe in Liverpool, some of the poor people used to be donkeys when they didn't have a carrot. What's the saying in Liverpool? If someone is going to say, I haven't got a carrot. Yeah, so we're like that. We're chasing something thinking we're just about to get it. And meanwhile, we're not realizing that Prabhupada says that the donkey can just stop and get some grass, which is easily available at the side of the road. But we're thinking, oh, let me give all my valuable time. There's nothing more valuable than time. Let me give my valuable time to get a few pennies so I can buy a few things that I don't really need, but I'm told I need them. So I can fill my house full of contraptions, and they are contraptions. But then next year, oh, the fridge is black, but everyone's got a white fridge this year. Let's chuck all the black fridges out, and everyone gets a white one. A couple of years later, oh, silver fridges, right? Oh, the doors on my kitchen, they're white, but they should be red now because everyone's wearing red. If somebody comes in and sees my kitchen with white doors, they'll think, who's this scumbag? Or we have to get this. We have to keep on renewing things all the time. And even if they're not worried so much about what people think, they're always thinking, well, okay, we've had this for some time. We need something new. They're hankering for something new. And that new is Krishna, who is ever fresh. It's always new. So we're trying to enjoy the energy of Krishna without understanding where it's coming from. But with the devotees, they're considered intelligent because they go to the source of all enjoyment, Rama, the reservoir of all pleasure. He's a Shaktiman. He's the possessor of all the opulences and all the things we think we can get pleasure of in the material world. So when someone is a possessor, then they have more to give than simply some paltry little material sense gratification. So I think we better stop there. If there's any questions, we'll give 1 minute for that.
Thank you, bro. There's an online comment, not exactly a question, more of a comment I believe from England. Hare Krishna. I think Prabhupada's teaching is prophetic. Could he have seen how firm and entrenched in materialism we have become?
Could he have seen what?
How firm in materialism we have become, yet still unhappy.
Yes, Eamon, thanks for that nice question. It's prophetic. It's interesting because Krishna is known as Trikalagya. He knows past, present, and future. And Krishna's pure devotee also knows this because he knows the process. He knows that if someone's doing this, the result is going to be that. It's not by doing this, it's going to be something different. It's not that by taking cyanide, they will become healthy. So he knows the path of knowledge and the path of ignorance. And I can see, when Prabhupada arrived in America, he said, he made a very humble prayer to Krishna that I can see that the Western world is steeped in the modes of passion and ignorance, and I don't know how they're going to accept your message. So please make my speaking suitable for their understanding. So he could see what was going on and where it leads to. So this is how a pure devotee can be prophetic. And similarly, if they see somebody who's taken to Krishna consciousness, they can say, well, you continue like this, you're going back to Godhead, you're going to Krishna. And therefore, these ancient Vedic literatures could tell thousands of years ago, like Bhagavad Gita, Ishupanishad, Srimad Bhagavatam, they could tell what the result's going to be by the way people are acting now. They know that it's just like if you want to go to one destination, it may be a straight line to that destination, but if you veer 1 degree off after a few thousand miles, you're not just like very small. When it starts off, it may be minute. It may appear that it's very similar, but by the time you've travelled, then that destination is quite different from where we're going. So therefore, it's mentioned in Vedic literature, Prabhupada told us that spiritual life is like a razor's edge. So we have to be, with a razor, it can do a nice job of shaving you, but if you put it the wrong way slightly, you can cut yourself. So therefore, this verse, Ekiha Karunandana, one has to be single-pointed and not deviated from the path. And it's difficult in this world, but if we become knowledgeable of that and act on that, then we will see the benefits, and then that encourages us to go forward. So I hope that helps. Iskon Guruvinda ki, Shuprabhad ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaur Bhakta